In this session, we're going to discuss part cores. So in this work order, I have a starter motor that I have received that is remanufactured. So let's take a look at this line. I'm going to double click, open it up. Here I have received the item. You'll notice it has a cost for the starter, and then there's a core value. Now this is typically the way the vast majority of your parts are entered in the system that do have cores on them. So what is going to happen with this core? The system will automatically assume you're going to return the core, which is the vast majority of the time. Now what will happen is you will not see this core in the returns bin until this work order is posted out on an invoice. So that's kind of your standard setup. That's a main default that most people use. Now you do have options here. Not returned. Not returned, when I do this and select OK, it will tell you right on the ticket that they're being charged for a core. And this will post out on the invoice like this. So they're going to be charged for the starter and the core. Now by doing it this way, this does allow you to issue a credit at a later date if you ever do get a core back from the client, and you can refund the money on the core and put the core in the returns bin. Let's open the line back up. The third option here is unknown. Now when I mark a core as unknown, you'll notice, see, now it changes to purple. Even though we've received it, it'll change it to purple. So it will not let you post out the work order to an invoice until you make a decision on whether it's returned or not returned. So this is to force you to actually double check and make sure you have a core going back. Now again, the default for this is in the location setup. So if you go to setup, locations, you can change that default to whatever you want. So I'm going to put this back to returned. So again, this will automatically put a copy of the core into the returns bin as soon as you post the work order to an invoice. So what happens occasionally is we may have a job that we're doing and we do have a part with a core, and I need to go ahead and post that invoice out. But I'm not going to post the work order to an invoice until much later. But I want to return the core right away. So one of the easiest ways to do this is to actually add a separate line item. So let's talk about that. So here I have an alternator, and let's go open the line up. So I'm going to receive in an alternator, and there is a core on it, but I don't want to receive it here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zero that out. Now I'm going to say, who am I purchasing the part from? Let's just say it's the Chevy dealer here. And we put an invoice number in. So whatever that invoice is. Now what I'm going to do is receive just the part. I'm going to add a second line for the core. So here I'm going to receive this. I'm going to say, okay, this is my alternator core. We'll go receive that in. I'm going to put in the part number so that way we can make sure we track it. I'm going to put in 1 unit, cost of $11. Now, notice I did not put this in the core value. I put it in the cost. Who was it? It's going to be the same supplier with the same invoice number, okay? Do not change that. I can even mark it up, it's no big deal. So now I have an actual separate line just for that core. So I'm ready to send the core back, even though I'm not going to post this work order out to an invoice till much, much later. Now I can just simply right click, and do a return. Now it's going to put it in the returns bin so I can send it back. I can track it, make sure I'm getting my core credit. Yet, even though I'm not going to post this work order out maybe for several days or maybe a month or two down the road. That's a very easy way to do that. So the second option to handle core returns that need to go back immediately, but you're not going to post out the work order to an invoice, would be to go to your purchases, go to items to be returned, and add it as a found item. So by doing it this way, you select who your supplier is. Let's say I do have a core that needs to go back to the Ford dealer. I'm going to put my part number in, whatever it is, and I'm going to put in a little description. Let's just say it's a starter core. I can even tell it is a core quantity. Let's say my core value is $25. Now, when I enter this, I do need to put it into the adjustment account. Now, typically, you're going to use the lost and found for most items, okay? Or you can actually create a core return account. That way you can track it in one particular journal. So you add that at that point in time. So this way I have it in the system, and now I have a core to go back. That'll go in as a found item. Now I can process it to the slips, return it, and then I get my credit for it. The only thing you'll have to remember at this point is later on when I do post the work order to an invoice and it puts that core in here, I'll need to come in here and delete it. And then at that point in time, then I'm going to delete the item and I'm going to put that right to the same journal. So I'm going to put that to that core journal, for example. One offsets the other here. So it's really a matter of how do you want to process a long-term core like that.